Welcome to Town Hall 127. Um, when we hit, I guess, four digits, I'm not sure what we'll do, but it should be pretty exciting. Actually, we're approaching that in the podcast, believe it or not, Glenn.
Gonna say, is that like a Y2K problem? Can we
Yeah,
actually get four
yeah.
digits?
We never planned on doing more than 999, so it's all gonna blow up. It is Wednesday, January 29th. Welcome to the CU Town Hall, the place where you could speak up and say the things you want to say. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Generally, and I'm not sure, I didn't see him here, but maybe he is. There's Mike Lawson. For those of you that don't know Mike, he is the creator, owner, host of CU Broadcast, a very excellent human being who has really dedicated his career to helping credit unions move along and do more great stuff. So when I started this, for those of you that don't know the history of the town hall, we started it as a response to the pandemic. We weren't sure what to do. We thought the best thing we could do is create an online forum for a whole bunch of people to get together and share what they were doing, what's working, what's not working. And that actually worked out pretty well. And then after that, I kept trying to kill it, and people kept wanting it. So we keep doing it. And its whole purpose is just to really build on the strength of the Canadian industry, and its number one superpower is collaboration. So that said, my name's John Best. I am the CEO and co-founder of Best Innovation Group, and the other host of this thing. And then the third host, most important host, the man of the hour, is always Glenn Survivor. And so Glenn is with us today. He's also the co-host of our podcast, Big Cast. So um, we'll jump in there and let's move on to the next one. Usually it's a big picture of Glenn, but not this time.
We don't need a big
Um,
picture, Glenn.
I'd like to thank our sponsors. And we're really excited because we've been working closely with America's credit unions, and they got some big plans for this. So we're excited to get really more involved with them as time goes on, and already planning out some of the areas I'm going to be speaking at this year. So really, it's been great to see that merger come to fruition. And the great folks from there are continuing to work with us. So we're excited to have America's Credit Union still with us. And if you haven't been to any of their conferences, their councils, and we're going to be switching out some of these logos. They have been kind of readjusting their organization in the sense of where the councils go. But if you haven't been to the councils meetings, they're incredible. They're the kind of place where you can find peers, and those peers can solve problems for you. You can solve problems for them. You can make friends in the industry. Again, back to that superpower of the credit union industry, it's collaborative aspect of what we do. Now, let's say that you're the kind of person that does not like playing 20 questions on the phone to try to, figure out who you are before you can get to whatever problem you're having with, or whatever thing you're trying to do. It doesn't have to be a problem with your credit union. Well, one of the things I think is going to be table stakes as we move forward, particularly in the new AI powered era. And I don't know, are we going to talk about DeepSeek a little bit today, Glenn? We will,
That's the
maybe.
plan. There, that
Yep.
was one of the exciting parts.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. But in today's era, particularly when now it's even cheaper to do, um, we're in the point where it's going to be interesting because now all this technology, particularly to replicate voices and other things, is even moving further down the food chain. And so what you need is something that's transparent, that instantly recognizes a member, that's for sure, and you need it provided by a forward-thinking company, particularly one that services credit unions. And Aluma is that product. I can't say enough for just a quick way to know to know who you're talking to, that's transparent. And they've got a lot of plans. That's the other thing. I love Aluma because they know that identity isn't just a call center. They know it's in front of someone. They know all the different places, and they're working in that direction. So very cool and very exciting to have them uh, working with us as a sponsor. And then Typhone. Um, People keep asking me, hey, we're looking at home banking again. What's the future? And I tell them, hey, the products on the market are all good. They're all going to do what you need. It's an 80-20 rule. All of them will, the 80% of them do the same thing. There's a 20% it's a little different, and depending on your needs. But the future is not going to be the current home banking products that we have. The future is going to be a home banking assistant, a personal assistant who knows everything about your account, an assistant that can be scheduled, an assistant that you can talk to like another human. But their only job 24 by 7 will be to monitor your account based on what you ask them. And most importantly, what's the most important part of your account, Glenn? Do you know?
Your balance?
Close. The balance is part of it. It's all the payments, right?
Oh, okay.
You got payment. Aren't you a payments guy? God, I teed you up like
I'm very humble. Yeah.
I freaking threw a softball out there. Um, payments. And we've gotten to know what their plans are. And it's gonna have to be next generation because the payments landscape continues to expand. What are we up to now, Glenn, in terms of major payments, person to person, across the board? I'd say we're at this point at six
Well,
major
I would just
options.
focus purely on just, FedNow and RTP popping up just over the course of the last year or two.
Right. And so you need something that's going to be effective to train the members and help them understand what their options are. I look at it like this. You've heard me say this before, but have you ever been to one of those places like the Postal Annex, Glenn?
But what?
A postal annex, a place that you take a package to, and they have FedEx, they have UPS, and or you just take something over there and you say they're stores, but they're not necessarily FedEx or Kinko's or anything like that. They exist to help you ship something, and they have access to all the carriers.
What I'm hearing is intelligent routing.
Why do you just want to jump to the punchline? Why is that something that you like to do? Fine, Glenn. We'll just move on then. All right. So check out Typhon. I think you'll dig it. And speaking of that, if you haven't been, this is actually, I think Glenn's around here somewhere. You can see him. There he is.
Bald head right in front.
He's in the front row right there. This is a picture from one of our meetings. I don't think it was our most recent one, but and it's the power of collaboration. We meet, we go over things, we look at technology that is upcoming. I'm proud to say that there were a lot of things that Arcadian worked with us in the Innovation Club that they got to first. It's not about deciding it's not about deciding sort of what the 2 year is or even the 4 year. It's the 5 to 7, right? We talked about quantum in 2017. We talked to OpenAI in 2018 before they ever blew up. And we're chasing these sorts of things so that you don't have to. But the goal is that you may have to think about the things you're purchasing now, the systems you're looking at. Heck, the quantum one's a great example. We started talking to our credit unions in 2017 and 2018 about quantum resistant encryption and encouraging them to ask their vendors for quantum resistant encryption. At the first, they were like, well, so science fiction, but slowly but surely, and the folks who did that first, they're now not adding more work, on the late. So that's what we do in the Innovation Club. If you want to check it out, you can go to the website or take a picture of that QR code. All right. So, Glenn, I'm going to let you explain this one.
Sure. So it suddenly occurred to me a parallel between what we're doing here and Dogecoin. Dogecoin started as a joke, and now it's actually
Are you suggesting a big gold coin? Because I could do that.
We could do that. You're good point. We wouldn't be the first to market with these types of things. But something that kind of started out as kind of a lighthearted joke that wound up having a lot of value. This kind of stems from our annual episode of the Big Cast, where we get together with our friends Ann Legg and John Janklius. I don't think they're on today. But we go through what we see as predictions for the fintech and credit union space for the coming year. And then as a graphic to promote that, I thought, well, everybody talks about, hey, I didn't have that on my bingo card. So why don't we come up with a bingo card just as an idea? We didn't have 25 entries, which is, 5 by 5 is how many you've got room for on a bingo card. So we started coming up with a few more, some of which were kind of crazy, some of which seemed relatively realistic. And then we thought, okay, well, what if we actually did this? What if we actually made it into a game of bingo? Elliot and Jackie went out and they actually found that you can generate bingo cards. There's this kind of, I guess, something like an icebreaker kind of group bonding exercise that is used at some companies. You can actually make bingo cards based if you input whatever kind of like, two truths and a lie, or, kind of get to know people with individual factoids of, check this box if you've been to Afghanistan, something like that. But so we just kind of kept cranking through these things. We are now up to having, I think, 66 different potential scenarios of what might happen this year. And we'd like to kind of open it up to the rest of the crowd and generate bingo cards and then follow along over the course of the year and see how they play out. So we're turning this into a real game.
Glenn, what do I get if I win?
That's a great question. That's actually
I
probably a
bet
question
Scott
for you,
Mills is
John.
going to send me on a cruise. I bet the Mills, William Mills will send me on a cruise around the world, right?
That sounds like a very generous offer, John.
We haven't actually gotten
Spoken by
that
Scott
far.
Mills, the person that is one of our great sponsors as well. So that's just my way of working him in.
But
Go ahead,
we've talked about, this is mainly for fun. It's actually, I think, educational. I think it actually kind of makes you think through, geez, and as you'll see in a minute, we're not even a month into the year. And two of these things, and I don't think they were things you necessarily would have expected, have already come true. So you can already check off a couple of boxes on the bingo card. If those happen to have made it onto your card.
You mean
We'll
like
talk about that
Nvidia dropping 10% out of the blue?
Now you're stealing the lines in advance, John.
What?
Yeah.
What? Oh, I'm sorry.
Turnabout
I'm
is
terrible.
fair play.
I'm so sad. Sorry about
So,
that.
and one of the things we'd like to do is we haven't generated the cards yet, but we're going to give you each a chance to generate your own bingo card and kind of follow along as time goes on, just for fun. But we'd like to crowdsource a few more entries. So over the course of this session in the chat, we'd like to have you think about some stuff. If you could, Madison, if you could forward on, let's look at some of the ones we've come up with already. Let's go past this one if you don't mind. We'll come back to that a little bit later. There we go. So here's some of the predictions, and we started off with things that are very easy to measure. One of the things we always do on the episode of the prediction episode for the Big Cast is we take a look at the Bitcoin price. Obviously, it was hot last year. We had a variety of predictions, and some as high as 195, others had it falling as low as 40. So if it hits any of these levels over the course of the year, we'll check off that box. Ethereum, same basic idea. We know the Federal Reserve. In fact, the Open Market Committee just announced that they held rates steady, which I don't think was much of a surprise, but I think it would be a surprise at some point, but totally not out of the question for them to go back and raise rates if inflation goes up, which is not out of the question. And then every time I think it's pretty likely that we'll probably be checking off that cuts rates by 25 basis points at some point this year. To your point, John, now that you ruined the fun, the first one that actually came true, and I don't think anybody saw this coming, and we can get into the separate conversation about DeepSeek, but this all popped up on Sunday out of nowhere. As you've probably been hearing, we suddenly have a new AI engine, basically, that competes with OpenAI, et cetera, coming out of China that actually is significantly more efficient in energy consumption and the need for the high-powered chips that folks like NVIDIA produce.
And to be a little technical about it.
Oh, please.
It's not so much the consumption of the model itself, it's the training of the model.
Yes.
But are we going to talk about this more past the bingo card?
Yeah, let's. But I'll just mention what happened already, just so you know. What we said was, okay, let's take a look at the December 31st price. It was $134, which, doubled over the course of the year. This stock's been going nuts for some time. And we had two different scenarios. Is NVIDIA going to continue to outperform the S&P 500? That may yet turn out to be true as well. But I don't think a whole lot of people had on their bingo card that it was going to decline 10% in the month of January. So when suddenly NVIDIA declined 17% on Monday, it's like, oh, look at this. We got one. But I even had to go back and look at that because early in the day, I thought, oh, it's way down. It must have happened. Well, no, because NVIDIA actually had already gone up about 5-6% since the beginning of January. It wasn't until the end of the day that it actually really fell. I think 121 was the point at which it fell more than 10%. It now has popped back up over that a little bit, but we'll see where it goes from there. But I personally find that one really interesting. But that is exactly the kind of thing that, leads to this. Gee, I didn't have a whole new, large language model, generative AI solution that totally changed the marketplace coming out of an unknown startup from China. on my bingo card. And here we are before the end of January. John, you want to say anything more about where you see that, what the implications for the market might be?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here playing with it now. It means that it's good news for credit unions because uh, you know, the whole point of what happened with DeepSeek was as part of our, obviously our biggest competitor is China when it comes to GDP. I think we're at like 36. The next closest is China at like 14 or something. By the way, I think if LA was its own GDP, I think it would be third. Um, we'd still be at the top, which is wild to think about. But we denied them access to these larger NVIDIA chips that we use to train these, and OpenAI will spend upwards of, hundreds of millions of dollars, to up to $1 billion to train an AI that we're using. And these guys popped out of the blue and said, "Yeah, we did it for about 6 million. And oh, by the way, our engine outruns yours. Our AI is smarter than yours."
And this is, I mean, it's interesting because to me, that's like the whole notion of necessity being the mother of invention. Oh, we
Well,
can't
it
get these
is. I mean, that
powerful
was
chips. Let's figure out a
exactly,
way to do without them.
yeah, they figured out how to do it without it. And I'm still looking into it, but so far all the technical aspects of it have been ratified. They, it's not like they did it, but they did something they're not telling us. It seems like it's true, I guess, is what we're concerned about. And that means that if you can do the same thing that OpenAI is doing on very expensive hardware and so much money on much cheaper hardware, which is what they did. I think they used 1,000 H800s, which is that's chump change. Who's using that, right? But if you can do that, then that means that will just cycle down more, and that means that we can train models. And that's something I've been saying all along, that there's such a big difference between this idea of, here, let me give this model a document, and then let me use the AI to talk to it or something, as opposed to a model that's been trained. And it's the difference of, I got a really smart guy and he's got a book on brain surgery, and I need brain surgery and he's my only option. Okay. But I'd much rather have someone that went to school for 10 years and learned brain surgery and was tested on it, which is what training is. That's the difference between training and uploading a PDF. You're basically giving a smart person a book about it.
I had
So,
a I had a conversation just earlier today with my friend Mitch Rutledge, who is the founder of Vertus AI, who
mhm.
doing exactly this type of AI work for the credit union space. And I wanted to see what his take on this was. If AI is right in his name, I figure, okay, he's given this some thought. I invited him to join us, and I think he might be getting on a bit later, but I know he had a conflict until the end of the hour. But he shared something with me that I thought was interesting, and it sounds like you could be just kind of making the best of it, but I've heard him say this well before this whole news came out, is this is like you said, John, it's not necessarily bad news from a credit union standpoint. His point was these models, the basic, the cost to run them, the base models are going to get more complex. He never thought that was where the value was anyway. Those aren't still probably the way that we are going to go to market to use these vertical specialized markets that know credit unions and things like that. Those are where you can actually find an opportunity to go forward with your customer base and with your own operations rather than a general knowledge base. And his point is that's what Vertus AI was doing all along. I think it's what a lot of these companies were doing, is working with specialized, for specific sectors and working on, honing the expertise for those industries. So if Mitch comes on, maybe he can add to that. But I thought that was a good kind of comforting point. Do you agree with that, John?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I think he's dead on. Dead on.
So a few more we're not going to hit every single one of these, but we have a few more in the middle column that we'll know in a couple of weeks when the Super Bowl hits. Remember a couple of years ago, we called it the Crypto Bowl when there were all those. Well, guess what? Crypto's hot again. So I'm very curious to see how many Super Bowl commercials we have for crypto. AI is hot again. Won't it be fun to kind of see how many AI-oriented commercials we have? From a more specific standpoint in our market, the issue around interchange, state legislation preventing interchange from being charged on taxes, gratuities, et cetera. That continues to play out. I don't see, I mean, at this point, I'm still saying Illinois is the only state that has done it, even though there's a restraining order in place. But there are several states that have introduced it. So let's see if anybody else passes that bill. On the other hand, it's currently under a restraining order. So I think there's a chance at the end of the year we go back and say, this is still grinding along. Nobody's actually officially put it in place. We'll see what happens there. Another one that just had some news today, the next to the last item on the third column, Elon launches X Money. Is that going to happen this year? He's definitely intending to do it. If you didn't see the news already, X Money just struck a relationship with Visa. Doesn't mean they're in market, but they've got a pretty important partner. So let's see where that goes. And these are the kind of things that I think we need to be thinking about. Another weird one is the new CFPB director. I think most people would have assumed that Rohit Chopra would be gone by now. He's not. I think some of that has to do with kind of a level of uncertainty of what's going to happen to the CFPB in general. So we'll be following that one too. Anything else on this slide you want to talk about, John? Or should we have one more slide?
Did anybody have Medicaid get shut down?
When we first made this chart, usually you get the free spot in the middle. We were going to have government shutdown being the free spot. I don't think that this app that we're using allows you to kind of have, and that one, it may be, well, we have a couple that happened already, but that may have been the safest bet of all.
Also, we forgot about Elon launches SpaceX to Mars. I know he's trying to get there. Also, whatever he's doing in Germany. So I think those two things. Yeah, Elon joins Nazi far right group. I think.
Another one that I think is pretty much
that's what the Germans are saying, anyways.
Another one I think is a gimme is Trump attacks the Fed. I mean, that's a little bit of a judgment call of what qualifies as attacking, but they didn't lower rates today. And if they wait again, something tells me he's going to get a lot now. He's already said he knows more about interest rate setting than the Fed. So
yeah,
I don't think we've quite. Oh, and by the way, that's one of our rules is the answers are in the discretion of judges, and what judges say is final. And the stakes are not exactly high. So I don't think
the judge is Scott, right?
Unless you're insanely competitive. Want to slide?
I was a little curious about nationwide ATM outage. I didn't think they were all connected, but you guys probably know a lot more about that than I do.
Yeah, kind of like power can go out down the line if you mainly that could be a ransomware outage, something like that. But
they all kind of lead back to two networks. Something happens to those, there'd be trouble. Sirius and what's the other one? Plus, and actually one of them is going to change hands with the Discover thing, which I think is in here.
We got, and again, I think at this point, that's probably another gimme. Discover Cap 1 being approved. That seems to be a foregone conclusion.
Yeah. So there are ways for that to happen, Scott. They're not all interconnected in that way, but it was more of we're just learning things every day, aren't we? So yeah.
Madison, you want to go to the next slide? We can just kind of
again, Frontier by Spirit and remove seats. I think that's another one.
And everybody start thinking about any that you might want to add, because we'd love to crowdsource a few more. And again, they can be totally serious, they can be provocative, they can be totally insane. The very bottom.
Hey, you stole my merger Tinder app idea. Darn it!
What? We didn't steal it. You used it on the podcast. That's really
good. It's still a good idea.
I heard that idea.
Actually from Mark Wilson said that out loud once.
Well, actually, while you mentioned that, just this week, the Acquire or Be Acquired conference was going on, and I've always been told that is a very good conference. Bank Director Magazine puts it on. It's mostly a bank event. I know there have been credit unions there. And I was told that somebody kind of lobbed a provocative statement from the stage there. There's all this noise about credit unions buying banks. And somebody said, well, what if a bank bought a credit union? Kind of a weird idea. I don't know exactly how you would do that, but stranger things have happened, and there's a lot of really creative people out there that may find some way to make it happen. I don't think it's going to happen, at least not this year, but that was the one that we kind of rounded out the list with at the very end. That was the last edition we made, just because I heard someone say it on stage at Bank Directors Conference. The other one that has happened, I think everybody's probably aware, is, it's almost an evergreen, and that's why it's in green. The The tax exempt status of credit unions, again, under fire. And this time, maybe a bit more than usual because you've got this whole Doge Commission looking at ways to slice money out of the budget, and they need to actually identify savings in order to offset the tax cut proposal that Trump is putting out, not only to extend the tax cuts from his first administration, but also make them deeper. Doesn't generate that much money, but they're looking for it wherever they can get it. So that's another one that is already a check on the bingo card. As I started to say, yeah, think about anything you want to put in, because if you haven't already, I don't have the chat open right now, but we'd love to get any other thoughts. And before we actually close this thing out and start generating bingo cards, we have room to add a few more. Just makes there more variety than from everybody's individual cards. Any others on here, John, that you want to specifically? Those are the ones that kind of jumped out at me that I thought were particularly interesting. Mortgage rates, I think, not too long ago, we thought that they, when the Fed started reducing rates, we thought mortgage rates would go down. Well, they haven't.
Do the LA fires count for climate events double in frequency and impact?
That was John Janklius's.
And that was before the fires hit. That was
when
before
we record. I'm trying to remember when we recorded that. That's one that's really hard to measure. That's going to be a tough one for us to actually find a way to decide how that plays out. One of my favorites, it's just a pet peeve of mine, is the idea, and I think based on exactly those types of things like the wildfires, the idea that anything would be future proof to me is just a ridiculous statement. I mean, no one knows the future. There's always something that comes and whacks you on the side of the head you don't see coming. So as soon as some fintech puts in a press release or something that it's going to future-proof credit union systems, I'm checking this one off and I'm going to call BS.
But on the other one that I was looking at was the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Didn't that happen?
It did not. It did not. That's interesting. We can talk about that too.
They came by and grabbed mine.
The crypto executive order
yours?
was issued, and a task force has been convened to explore it, which I think is interesting. The price of Bitcoin actually trended down just a little bit after that announcement came out. I interpret that, well, there's two things you could possibly think that means. Is one, everything was already anticipated and therefore baked into the price. Or two, they were a little bit disappointed. The crypto zealots thought it was going to go further. I think some of them did expect, thou shalt be a Bitcoin reserve, and it will happen immediately. And by the way, it's not a Bitcoin reserve. They're calling it a digital asset stockpile. So it's more general than just Bitcoin.
I wonder if they gave back the Silk Road guys. You know how much Bitcoin he had when they grabbed him? My gosh.
That is an interesting question, because one of the things I was going to mention is, although there is not technically a strategic digital asset reserve at this point, there kind of is. Because the government has possession of mostly Bitcoin, but some other digital assets as well that they've confiscated from illicit parties that had them for ill-gotten gains. There was talk that those were going to start being liquidated at the end of the Biden administration. It doesn't seem to have happened. That would obviously cause additional supply in the market and potentially cause the price to go down. Now, I have a really hard time picturing any of that stuff being liquidated anytime soon, because it kind of
and just so everybody knows, in case you're not aware, some time ago, there was a kid, and actually, believe it or not, it was True West of all people, and I don't know if they're on, but True West had one of their board members had this kid in his Boy Scout troop. His name was Ross Ulbricht, and he started basically bad guy Amazon on the dark web, where you could go and buy a hit on somebody. You could buy drugs. You could buy all kinds of stuff. And the way he facilitated the transaction was using Bitcoin. And when they caught him, he had a ton of it. And actually, one of the FBI agents tried to steal some of it. There was a movie about it that was pretty cool. It was in 2021. It's not great, but it's not horrible either. But that whole thing kind of came together. And when they seized it, they seized not just that. I mean, they've seized tons of Bitcoin from criminals that are out there. So I just, that obviously is what I think they were saying would become of the reserve. But just last year, they dumped 2 rounds of it back onto the chain.
The majority of it is still out there. I mean, they still are holding, I forget how many billion, but it's still out there for the most part.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. So for those of you that haven't seen it, go check out Silk Road. It's it's interesting. It's an interesting thing, and I don't know how you feel about him getting out or not, but certainly he's free. So there you go. Maybe
The
we'll
other
get him to
thing
come on and talk to us. Maybe he's the new Kevin Mitnick.
you you want to have Ross Ulbricht come on the town hall?
I do. I'd love
Oh
to
boy.
talk to him. I bet he's got a
What
lot
could
to say.
possibly go wrong?
I don't know. What can he do? Hurt us on Zoom? We'll be fine. He's been in jail. Got a catching up to do. But
One other thing that's on this list that also kind of plays into that crypto executive order is the stablecoin bill. Stablecoin bill being signed into law. One of the other things that task, I forget if it's a task force or a working group, but they've been assigned to do is come up with a responsible framework and regulation for stablecoins. I found that pretty interesting because in my mind, from a actual payments vehicle standpoint, stablecoins have a lot of potential, and they've made a whole lot of progress already, kind of quietly when all the attention in the marketplace is on the appreciation in value of Bitcoin and some of the other coins. Because the whole idea, you would not hold a stable coin looking for appreciation because by definition, they're supposed to stay at exactly $1. So the fact that they're kind of the stable coin, the crypto release did not mention the word Bitcoin once, which I thought was pretty interesting. It mentioned the word stablecoin 4 or 5 times. So there's clearly some traction in that area that they see as a potential. It's also kind of being positioned as a way to maintain the integrity and the international prominence of the US dollar. Almost all stable coins right now are dollar denominated. And the question becomes, okay, well, other people could start getting into that business. That's where it starts getting even a little bit dicier because the executive order also prohibits any development of a US CBDC, a central bank digital currency. That's a separate conversation, and I think it starts to make some broad statements in the executive order that I think are more debatable, but I think it's a worthy debate, but they're kind of stated as fact that it's incredibly harmful to the US community and blah, blah, blah. I don't know about that one. But it's pretty clear that CBDCs are not going anywhere in the foreseeable future under this administration. AI storage intensifies. I just realized, I mean, that's there kind of toward the bottom of that middle column. Well, maybe that's not as relevant as it was a week ago.
Hey, Glenn, maybe you can clarify something, or maybe we have a new question in here. Third column, fourth one down, instant payments cannibalize credit card. I was thinking, I've been hearing more about pay by bank.
Yep.
Is that the same thing, or is that a little different?
No, I think it is the same thing. One of the things that comes up a lot is, we have, depending on how you want to define instant payments, you've got FedNow, you've got RTP, you've got same day ACH. Pay by bank just basically means it's coming directly out of the bank account rather than over the debit or credit rails. So it could really be any of them. Well, instant payments, same day is not really instant. How fast is fast enough? One of those kind of questions. But right now, if you look at, in fact, just today I saw RTP release their new numbers in terms of volumes. I know same day ACH is releasing their data tomorrow. The trend has been that they've all been going up at the same time. Regular ACH is going up, credit card transaction, everything is going up. So to say one is cannibalizing the other, I've heard that argument. At this point, and this seems to have been a long-term trend in the industry, we just tend to generate more transactions. It doesn't tend that one takes away from the other. There's just a new one that adds more to the pile. So if we do start seeing that, credit card is either going down or their growth rate is declining significantly at the same time that pay by bank, which would probably show up in one of those other columns by definition, is really going strong, then I'd say we can have an argument about, okay, maybe it is cannibalizing, but my belief is that won't happen this year. Now I haven't been looking. Has anybody added anything in the chat? I'd love to see anybody else's thoughts of any other kind of, like I say, they can be silly, they can be serious, anything that you think is worth looking at, in terms of predictions that might happen. Co-housing mortgages, that one showed up. That was Ann Legg who spoke to us about that one. The idea, and I've seen a couple of entrepreneurs kind of going out of this space, people who may need to go in and buy a house jointly because of the affordability issues, about the availability issues, and they're not legally married. How do you set up a mortgage where two people can actually have joint ownership in some way that can be practically funded without having a big wad of cash? Again, is it going to happen this year at scale? Don't know, but it's an interesting idea.
Okay.
Any other questions or
Well, I was,
questions?
as we were talking about this, I was thinking that um I'm wondering, given what we're sort of seeing in terms of the path with Trump and his executive orders, and how they're immediately sort of being challenged, and they, obviously that's the plan. That's how they've gone about it. Have you parsed through most of those executive orders? Like, for example, I got an email from Carrie Hunt from America's Credit Unions. Is she their chief economist now? I think she might
She's our
be.
chief advocacy officer.
Advocacy officer, and she was discussing how this freeze and stuff. Is that going to be our next discussion, or?
Are there any other slides, or is this, I think we can really have the discussion here, Madison, unless I'm not aware of anything else coming up.
At
still.
some point, Glenn, you should show those other screenshots so they can see how to get their card.
Yeah, let's get through that, then we'll discuss the other. That's a good point.
So Madison and, Jackie or Madison, you may want to weigh in because I'm not 100% sure on the mechanics, but the basic idea is once we close this out, we will, give you a link. We'll send it by email after the fact, after this call, so that people can join. It's, you can join even in progress. You can kind of catch up on the card, but the idea being that you can generate your own bingo card and follow along. And, the instructions are here. We'll send the link. You create it, put your name in. You need to save the link so that you can go back and access that specific card and follow along with the game. We'll check it off. And as you saw on the slide, I think one or two before this, recent developments, whenever any of these come to pass, we'll add them to the list. We'll check them off. We'll make a mention of it at the beginning of the town hall. And I think I can see two different games here. One, the first person who truly gets a bingo, across, down, diagonal, or, and that may be one winner. And then the other winner might be at the end of the year, how many people have the most of their squares covered, regardless of whether it actually makes it into a full row. So my thought, and again, that's not 100% final yet, is there?
Yeah, that sounds great.
So that's the basic process.
Yeah, it's super simple, and on each of the town halls, we'll let you know what's been checked off, and we'll show you like who's in the lead and what have you. And if you lose your link for whatever reason, you can message us in the next town hall, and we'll direct send you the link if you lose it for some reason. But a simple bookmark, and you can follow along as we go.
And if you didn't notice, we had a little bit of fun. It's Big Go, not Bingo.
That's gonna be our coin name. Hey, there's a real interesting post in the chat when you get a chance here.
Oh,
It's and Natalie, if you want to unmute, I'd love to
Okay.
pick your brain on this a little bit. So, welcome from Brazil.
Yeah.
Are you with a credit union in Brazil? Or are you here but you're from Brazil, but you work for a credit union here, I imagine?
I work indirectly with credit unions in the US. I work for a company called Senseria. It's a service provider, a technology provider, and we work with fintechs, credit unions, and we work with companies that implement Pix, the instant payment here in Brazil. And Pix here has achieved amazing numbers.
Yep.
So collaborating with these prediction around instant payment, I don't think that you guys will achieve this number, maybe not in 2025, but it has potential to achieve it.
Interesting.
thank you.
And-
Yeah, I agree. I've been following along closely with both Pix and UPI in India, and I think they're often used as kind of the benchmarks for what may or may not happen. And, I think the challenge is always the difference in the marketplaces. both in terms of unbanked population, the way it's been rolled out, the fact that there's far fewer institutions, that you can actually get more of them on board very quickly. But
Mhm.
I absolutely agree. I'd love to follow up and kind of compare contrast.
Sure,
So-
Glenn. Happy to.
So, but it begs the question, if we're talking about this very, like, for example, I know Venezuela, didn't they decide that they're embracing Bitcoin? That's their currency, if I remember right.
I know
Um,
Costa Rica did. I'm not sure about Venezuela.
I thought it was Venezuela too, but so it begs the question that in a more crypto friendly US environment, and you mentioned this about stable coins, but is there the possibility of something like, just to use a dumb example, it could happen, but it would be crazy, is, to me, Pix seems like Venmo on steroids, right? It does, for example, does Pix avoid 16-digit numbers? Or does it use the same rails, Natalie?
I'm sorry.
Natalia, I'm
repeat the
sorry,
question.
Natalia, I apologize. I can see it now
No
on my bigger
worries.
screen.
No worries.
Apologies.
Could you repeat the question, please? I'm sorry.
Question is, does Pix use 16-digit numbers? In other words, does it ride the rails of the standard Visa and MasterCard type systems?
Actually, we have 3 ways for transferring money. You can, what we call keys. So you can use the person's document or the cell phone or bank account and agency. So those numbers combined create the key. So it's a code for transferring the money between accounts. Something similar to what Colombia is doing, and now with the idea of Pix, and it's a little bit like what FedNow is doing, and Zelle and Venmo as well.
Interesting. Yeah, because that's what I was thinking was Venmo, like maybe a crazy outlandish bingo card is, Venmo directs, creates direct merchant connection or something,
Yeah.
you know? Was, because I mean, I think I feel like that's like right on the tip of a lot of different things that are working in these areas. And, if open banking comes to pass, which I know, that would be sort of the game changer, right? Because your problem now is you have no way to know if we can guarantee the funds or not. But if open banking comes to pass, I think that opens the door for alternate payments that do not ride on the 16 digits. That said, did Brazil make any rules around, with it getting so big, are there rules for like fallbacks and clawbacks and all the things that have to happen for that,
Yes.
for it to be a network?
Yes, there are insurance methods for those potential activities. And you mentioned open finance, open banking, open finance. And here in Brazil, this initiative is super strong. And we are now over 2 years now implementing the integration of open finance and instant payment, which made it even stronger, the possibility of using instant payment for integrating with e-commerces, having more partnerships between fintechs, banks. So it really increases numbers. So Sincity is also part of FDX, Financial Data Exchange, and we've been talking about them with use cases that we have here, how to implement that, how to take care of those scenarios where you can have flaws during the process, how to integrate with potential scenarios that will help population to implement.
Yeah, and just a quick question. I threw something out there for fun.
I
It
see
made me
that.
think of buy now, pay later, but I like buy now, pay never. I think that would be a popular system service. But is BP buy now, pay later something that Pix also does in its system? Does it supplant those things like Klarna and other things that have gone a different direction in our ecosystem? It got me curious.
Actually, it is buy now, pay later. For Brazil, there is a similar context. You can use Pix to pay with installments. So you can arrange those payments and keep the transfers going month by month. So not the same term, but what we do here is pretty similar.
Does that mean
Do
that
they-
you don't
do
need
they
a
get
Klarna
direct-
to be in the mix?
I'm sorry.
Do you not need a Klarna to be involved in that? I mean, it can be just between the merchant and the consumer, and
No,
the
you do
details
have,
are covered by Pix?
you do have, it's a regulated initiative by the central bank. You have to have this intermediate
Okay,
supporting
got it.
the action. Yeah.
You
How
mentioned-
does,
Go ahead,
Good.
Go ahead, John, sorry.
how does Pix do direct deposit then? Do you still have a bank involved and you transfer money to Pix, or it's connected that way? So they
Yes.
haven't taken that step like PayPal to try to create a checking account or a DDA account similar to sort of the laws and what we have here.
Yeah, you have to have a bank account and integration between banks in order for the Pix to happen, for the transfer to happen.
Huh.
So it does require a bank account. You do need to be
Yeah,
banked.
yes, you
But it
do.
has led to a greater percentage of the bank population, right? That's been one of the ways. you've driven
Exactly. And this is one of the reasons that Pix is so popular here, because Pix has helped banks to bring more people to create new accounts. So unbanked now are banked because of Pix. So you see people selling small merchants selling things and using Pix to pay. You even see people that are underserved, unbanked. Sometimes they live on the streets. They ask for money and they have a Pix number so you can
Oh,
transfer.
so like instead of putting change in a hat,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
just wave your phone at them.
Exactly. They
I
have
like
this.
high tech grifters. I like it. That seems
Yeah,
like a job I could do.
super creative.
It is. Well, I mean, what's the difference of that? And like, I mean, at some point we probably thought, well, yeah, there's these interesting moments of transition. I like to think about the first time, there was a time when cars and horses were on the same road, right? And the cars scared the heck out of the horses, but it didn't take long for roads to become, no horses allowed kind of a thing. And you wonder the same happened for money. There was a transition from whatever we were using for currency to, one standard currency. And there was probably some thought as, hey, what are you going to do with this currency? You could get in a store to use it anyways, kind of a thing. So I think there's these very interesting moments, but I think we can also learn from, you know, uh, communities and countries like Brazil to see how they succeeded or how this sort of took off. It kind of reminds me of oh, what was the name of the one in Ghana? Was it Pina?
M-Pesa?
M-Pesa, that's it. Because that originally took off on the old phones.
Very basic.
Yeah, very
feature-
basic, but
low feature
I
phone.
believe it's still, and that was actually Safari Telecom. That was their telecom provider. Pix is not a telecom provider, are they, Natalia?
No, no.
Yeah,
no.
kind of a
Thank
PayPal
God,
kind of a
right?
thing.
So Pix is very related to FedNow. It's an RTP transaction. So
So
yeah,
it's instant.
yeah, instant.
Now, you mentioned, I think I heard you say, are you part of the FDX coalition? Are you a member?
Financial data exchange, yeah.
Yes.
It
That's
is.
interesting. I didn't realize. So you're, I guess you're ahead of them. I mean, they're actually borrowing, I guess, some of your standards.
Yes, we are actually we are sharing experiences of open finance implementation here in Brazil, how it relates to instant payment, challenges, things that went wrong, things that are working, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. Especially now with Section 1033, FDX is creating the specifications that are according to the consensus standards that CFPB has asked, and they are reviewing everything. So we are talking about how will we integrate financial institutions, how will we provide central directory so they can connect, exchange information, provide interoperability, security, and how it can FDX APIs and other APIs can be used to replace screen scraping, for example. We are talking about security methods as well.
Yeah, well, not only that, but more importantly, to replace screen scraping, but also to give it some rules around it. where you could say, hey, you could go in and get this, but we don't want you getting this or that. But it's also going to create some new things like bill payers and things like that. I think this is all saying this, what the message to me from what I'm hearing is ship Glenn to Brazil. And I don't think he'll fight me. So I'm just going to start a little GoFundMe on the town hall. I don't think we need a lot. It's a one-way ticket, but he can find his own way back. But yeah, we'll get Glenn loaded up. And Glenn, I want you to just go around and we'll send Elliot with you so he can film you and you buy stuff with pics and let us know how it goes.
That's exactly the kind of lessons learned stuff. And like I say, I mean, obviously there are significant differences in the market. So you can't expect it to work exactly the same way, but it'd be foolish not to at least look at those and understand
Do
how
you get
we
the
can
receipts? I
borrow.
wonder. Do you get the receipts in the pics thing?
Yeah, you do. Mhm.
Oh, see, that's the dream, Glenn.
What-
That's
what
my
about-
dream.
What about open
I
finance?
hate receipts. They should just be in home banking. They should be part of the dang transaction. Take the
I can
SKUs out if
definitely-
you're mad about it.
I can share some stories with you. I can provide materials that may connect with this conversation, how Pix works, provide more details
Great.
for you guys to understand.
I
how
think
it-
you should live stream from Brazil, Glenn. That's the only way to properly do it.
Right.
You mentioned open finance. Is that kind of a phase 2 of the PIX initiative, or is it a separate but related? How is it kind of structured? I'm not sure it's a logical question, but
It is, it is.
Understand.
It is actually an evolution of the open banking part. So we've started implementing open banking in Brazil in 2021. So it involved products and services, branches of the financial institutions that were part of the movement. And we've started with the data sharing, the consent around the data that was being shared, but related to the end user of the account. And another phase was the integration between open banking and instant payments. So for example, imagine a marketplace that provides the checkout part of the marketplace. You are able to pay with Open Finance Pix. It means that you can relate your account, your keys, your Pix keys, and then you can do an instant payment action to buy for whatever you want from the marketplace. And now, why do we call it open finance? Because we are already talking about different products and services that are being shared. So investments, we talk about open investments here, open insurance, exchange. So different products that relates to banking, but we are bringing interoperability, data format, API standardization, so we can exchange this kind of information. That's why open finance.
thank you. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It really is. Because,
So
you know,
based on what we've learned here, is there anything that we can add as a prediction?
I saw the open banking moves forward in the prediction, and I was dying to ask. So we've been following the news and all of the speculation around, will CFPB continue? How will it affect Section 1033? So we are very curious to see if this taking so long to decide if Chopra continues or if the regulation will be paused. So will it affect timelines, for example? Because there are institutions that need to be ready by April next year. And it's very, very, very complex to have an open finance initiative in place. So the more the decision for moving forward with Section 1033 goes, it is worse for the participants that have to deliver something around April next year.
We do have on the bingo card, or one of the options, and it won't be on everybody's card, is open banking moves forward, which is kind of a negative. It's like, we're not going to know that until the end of the year, that once we see that nothing got stopped. But my my personal belief is it's going to go forward.
well, but we also had on the bingo card, you know, does the CFPB continue?
Yeah. I mean, that's, but
and-
you know, even if the CFPB doesn't continue, I mean, I think that I have to assume there was also a conversation, will the FDIC continue? But it doesn't mean it's the insurance policies, you know, the insurance coverage would go away, would be tucked in someplace else. So I feel like, you know, we're far enough down the path, Natalia, to your point, I mean, could they potentially push a deadline? I could potentially see that, but it's interesting because depending on who has the administration's ear at any point, I think the notion of open finance actually is consistent with a lot of their beliefs. On the other hand, if there's enough of a pushback from some of the large player bankers who may have enough influence, maybe that goes the other way. I mean, at least in terms of timing. But in my view, that at least in the US, the large banks, which are the ones that have to do it first, they're already pretty far down the path. It's the smaller ones that are going to have the harder time, and they've got longer to. It's
Yeah.
that typical thing, the term paper, that your college term paper is not due for another, 3 years. So guess what? We're not going to work on it for 2 of those years.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
The access to data, how hard it is to access everything. Yeah.
Yep.
Smallest will
I
suffer.
have an idea based on what you just said and we can close it out with this, the bingo card. I think we should have everybody put in, and it's gonna be 2 numbers. The first number is the total number of banks merged into credit unions that they're predicting for 2025.
Ooh,
And the second one will be the total number of credit unions to merge for 2025. And the reason I bring this up, Natalia, is what you were saying is that's part of our problem. Like, I can't imagine that the Brazilian ecosystem is as flush with financial institutions. No country in the world is as flush with financial institutions as America is. But the idea that we're continuing to see that consolidation across our industry. So it's 2 of them. And what we'll do is, I think we should have a succession of them. So like, the banking things exceeds 10 or 15 or whatever. And then if it hits that, you get that bingo. And then there might be one above that. So we can create like a 3 level for both, Glenn.
yeah. And for
Um,
perspective, I'm pretty sure I don't have the number right in front of me. I believe it was 22 banks that were
Was.
at least
And that was the
announced.
highest number ever.
That was the highest ever. I don't know what the number of credit union mergers was. I'm going to guess it was someplace around 100, but I don't know.
So I'm gonna make my guess. There's mine. So the first one's banks, the second one's credit unions. So if everybody wants to throw it in, we'll try to use that to, Elliot will do that. He'll weight it and come up with 3 for each, and we'll add them to the bingo card. So, but how many institutions do you have, Natalia, just in Brazil? Just curious.
Currently, we are far behind US in around numbers. So currently in production with the Open Finance Initiative, there are over 900, but we have around 3,000 banks here.
You have 3,000 banks.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's interesting. I thought you had far. I always say
yeah.
that nobody outside the US has more than a couple hundred. I didn't realize
Yeah.
you had that many.
We can categorize them as financial institutions because we have banks, the big 13, we call it, because they were the pioneers of the open finance. We have credit unions. We are very strong in credit unions here in Brazil. So financial institutions as in general, let's say.
So that's 3,000 across all those categories.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well, give everybody just a few more minutes to get their new stuff in. Do we have anything else to go over? I think the bingo cards are a big thing this year, but any closing slides or housekeeping from the folks who really make all this work? Glenn, I just show up and look pretty, and Lawson too, but
Actually, Natalia, one more question if I can. You just mentioned that Pix is expected to overtake credit cards. Brazil's never had quite the credit card culture of the US. Are credit card transactions actually declining, or is this another one of those cases that there's just more transactions being created?
There's more transactions being created, and credit unions, credit cards, sorry, are very popular here in Brazil because they have a lot of benefits.
Yeah.
So considering the characteristic of the population here, that's why Pix is increasing, but credit cards are very.
They're holding their own.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
all right. Well, the only other thing I have to add is I am hard at work on the Blue Sky server for us.
I was
which
going to
is
ask you
kind of
about
like-
that. I'm very interested in where that's going.
Yeah, you're going to be the first person on it after Melissa and the staff, once I get it finished.
And that's community wide, right? It's for everyone to share.
And Natalia, thank you for taking the time and jump in. Really enjoyed speaking with you.
It
Hope
was a
you'll join us in
pleasure.
the future. Learned a lot.
Nice meeting you all.
Thank
Yep.
you.
All right, folks. Well, we'll give you this time back. Thank you to the William Mills Agency who is helping us with the bingo card and often brings more things. Lawson, so glad that you could show up. We're so happy to have you.
Better
No,
late
I'm
than
just-
never, man.
I already sung your praises.
Looks
bro.
like
I'm at Q
Mike's on
Symposium
site
right now.
someplace.
Yeah, where are you at?
I'm at Q Symposium on Kauai, and you
Oh,
might
oh.
recognize
I'm
Tough
sorry.
life.
that person right. Oh, it's Kurt Kordleski, if you can see my hand. It's right
Of course,
there.
Kirk Gillespie is
Ah,
in
there you
Hawaii.
go.
It's right there. Always moving and shaking.
Yeah, well. You have a rough life. We're gonna send Glenn to Brazil, so maybe
Oh,
you can go with
cool.
him. Yep, I'll put the GoFundMe up on the next one. If everybody kicks in a couple bucks, we can get him there.
Right on. Just a
Confident.
couple. Just a
Yeah,
couple.
he'll be all right. He doesn't
When are we
need
going
a
to talk
hotel or
about deep?
anything.
When are we going to talk about Deep Seek,
You
John?
joined too late.
Oh,
You
we're
did.
gonna go deep
Or
into
did you?
Deep Seek. We
Okay.
talked about it already, but I'm actually warming up for a much deeper seek on. I'd love to come on your show and talk about it if you want.
Let's
So,
do it. Let's do it.
all right,
Yeah,
schedule it.
I would love
Let's
it.
make it happen.
Okay.
But Glenn will have to come with me because I also want to talk about the bingo card
We'll do it
Okay.
in Brazil.
part of it. So,
Alright.
yeah, get it scheduled. So yeah, me and Glenn, let's do it together.
Okay.
All right.
Look forward to
All
it.
right, folks. Thanks
See
for
ya.
joining us. Take care.